Hey everybody, it's Axel Villamil at 24 Shades of Blue. We're here with Rob Johnson, who's the superintendent at Toronto Police Service. How you doing, Rob?
Very good. Thank you so much.
So how's everything been for you?
Very good. It's a challenging time managing through this pandemic, but we're doing okay. Thank you.
That's great. I saw that you've been in the service for 30 years. So I mean, I'm sure you've seen a lot. I'm sure you've dealt with a lot. I would like to ask you, how has things changed, I guess, from, overall from a department aspect of how you're handling, I guess, the mental health aspect of a lot of people, as well as, all the changes with COVID. How has things totally flipped around, or have things stayed the same? I'm not entirely sure. So I'd like to ask you that.
So it's funny when you say that. I have to kind of think to myself, what are the milestones? And depending on where one sits in the organization, different rank, different places you work, as well as the world around you sort of evolving. There's a number of ways to kind of answer that. I think at its core, policing when I started in the late '80s was more about reacting to things as opposed to being proactive. And there has been a continuous shift since the early '90s to be more proactive with respect to how we involve ourselves and problem solve with the community. So that's probably one of the big aspects. The other part is I think we're more thoughtful on our human resource side, not only in terms of member wellness, but to speak to the mental health aspect that you had mentioned, but also in how we recruit, and seek people to come and work in our organization. And I think, that in itself leads to progressive change with a whole host of different things. In the area of technology, how we're doing this thing now. 30 years ago, we had typewriters, the rotary phones had just gone out of the divisions when I got there. So, now we're doing things electronically like this with smartphones, all that kind of stuff. So technology has fueled, the innovation, that we're seeing right now. The other component of this that can't be forgotten is relationships with community. I look back to 30 years ago, and I don't recall ever, obviously the community has always played a huge role in what it is that we do. That's why we're here. But we never really consulted with community. If we did, it was about telling them what we thought they needed, or what we thought, was going to solve whatever issue they had. And that's been turned on its head the other way, which is, obviously the better way to do it. Partner with us and help us solve those problems.
Absolutely. I feel like the conversation is what I'm noticing a lot is, from the public side, is that you're more vocal to talking to the community and everything. I wonder on your end, are you seeing the community talking back more as well? Like, do you think it's the relationship is equal now?
So when you say equal, depends again where you sit. Obviously, different communities feel that they have different levels of access, and equality is something that, I think is individual, not only people, but communities. And I think, we can always strive to do better. But, through technology and people savvy with information and wanting access to information, community is certainly more engaged. Before it would be, this is what it is, we'll tell you, and there's very little follow up. Now there's continuous questions around, tell us why, or why do you do it this way, and there's more depth to the questions that are asked to explain what it is that we do. And I think we struggled for years on being put in that position because we come to work and we believe we're doing well for the community and are with all best intentions, not realizing another perspective. Like, why would you question the police? We're here to help you. That you shouldn't question us, to the point where you have every right to question us, and we have to find the answer. In that exercise, we certainly, the police, I think, get better at what it is that we do in connecting with community.
Absolutely. And, I absolutely agree with that, because I think these questions haven't been asked. And I think that's why there hasn't been that development, from both parties, and I think it's so important that I love that the service is doing that, accepting those questions and working hard to, further work on those aspects that people are questioning about. Back to your title, superintendent, you have a huge, important task, which is, fulfilling, and working on those 81 requests from the city. And I would love to know, how are you feeling, with those requests, from the people? How is the force feeling about all of them? Are you ready? Do you think it's possible?
I'm encouraged. I'm excited because, we can't be stagnant, and there's nothing wrong with always looking at how we can do things better. And I think, certainly at the chief, the command level, senior officer level in the organization, we're used to kind of being adaptive to that. The men and women who are on the front lines, sometimes I can see, the frustration because they don't have the full conversation around why we're doing these things. And that's part of our job. That's part of my job as a senior officer in the organization, to have that communication, to fill in those blanks for the men and women that actually have to physically go and make some of those hard changes in some instances. But, the 81 recommendations are it's a chance for us to not reinvent, but look at ways of strengthening partnerships, look at ways of responding to community concerns in a more comprehensive sort of wraparound way, as opposed to radio call for this, we attend, we take a report, and we move to the next one, right? And I know it's not that simplistic, but these reform recommendations allow us to sort of look at ways that maybe we can partner with people to do things in a different way that will have a better outcome, obviously, as well as maybe prevent some of the problematic issues that the community faces. So I'm encouraged by them. I think we can never stop and be stagnant in what it is we do, because then you get complacent, right? And you miss opportunities to work together to solve issues that everybody wants to be dealt with.
That's exactly it. And I really love that point where I think it's the difference. What I'm seeing, and at least from what I'm hearing from you, is more of a proactiveness of trying to work on what you can do to prevent anything else to come. And I had another conversation back with Dan Ramos, the crime preventative coordinator, and we're talking about humanization of police officers. Obviously, police officers are human. They're people there's good people and there's bad people, and we obviously understand that. And I think I want to talk more on the humanizing aspect. What are we missing from the public? What are we not seeing enough that we don't think in that realm, where we I think a lot of us are putting the title, unfortunately, as, to serve and protect. And these are the people that take care of us, and that's it. But we forget about that, you suffer too, and you deal with things every day, not just on your job, but outside of the job. So I want to talk about what is it that we're missing?
So, I don't know necessarily if the public are missing anything. I mean, you could turn that around and say, what are the police missing? Right? Why is it that that sometimes we don't see things the same way? We deal with things, based on our insight and our perspective. And I think that's no different from anywhere else. The difference is obviously, the police are entrusted with an extreme amount of authority and power to impact people's lives. And, it's funny, you start out in this profession, and, things are new and coming at you, and you still have, I think, real connection to community. What we're encouraging now, more so than ever before, is to maintain those connections so that you don't forget the perspective that you had before you became a police officer. But what I think some of us lose or forget, that, okay, this is a uniform that I put on, and it's just a shirt to me, right? I know it holds more than that, but what I have to remind myself, what our folks have to remind ourselves, is this carries a certain amount of stigma in some communities, right? And so we have to adjust ourselves to be able to adapt to that. That piece of it. When you say to be more sort of humanizing, I mean, we're paramilitaristic. You look at our equipment, all this other kind of stuff. It's odd for people because it's not their world, and all they see is maybe the outcomes when we're involved in things. So I see it as a two-way street. We have to be able to be more flexible and allow ourselves and encourage questions and to be seen as people. But at the end of the day, because of what it is that we're entrusted to do, it can be problematic for some people. And I'm not sure if I would agree that I think the public needs to see, or has to change to see us differently. I think we have to be able to bring ourselves to see the public's perspective. It's a little bit of a nuance, but part of that is you look at our social media platforms for most of our officers now, and the way we're engaging different communities. I think there is a real there's a real push for us to engage in different ways with community, and I think it has to really start with the police. So at the base of all that, having said all that, I think it's just two-way communication. It's making sure we that we truly believe, and I say we do, but again, perception is people's reality. That we treat people as equals. That everybody has a seat at the table, no matter what you're wearing, no matter where you sit in society, of whatever measurement you want to use. That everybody has a right to be heard and to be part of the conversation. So that communicative piece, I think, humanizes everybody. And I watched Chief Kramer's interview with you guys, and it was something that I believe I didn't have it as eloquent as he did. He commented on a phrase that somebody had told him years ago, and it was basically, if you know somebody's story or you know who they are, it's a little harder to ignore them. And that concept, I think, speaks to this humanizing piece. You have to get to know people, listen, speak to people as equals, right? And that's where the humanizing starts, and that's where the real partnerships begin.
No, absolutely. I love that you actually flip that around on me, because you're right. It is a two-way, it's an absolute two-way streak on not just, the public trying to get to know things. It's also that the police needs to do that as well. Because, at least from my perspective, nobody wants to not have a relationship with the service at all. We do, right? We're here because, we're all a community. And I think that's the main thing that a lot of us tend to forget, is that we all have to work together, to survive together. And especially in these very interesting times in COVID, I'm sure you're dealing with more than you've seen ever. Now, I would love to step into the COVID world for a second. Is how are you dealing with COVID in the force as well? I understand that you actually had to handle some cases. How did that look like when you were working there?
So before getting reassigned to the Strategy Management Office, I was in charge of 14 Division, which is in Toronto, sort of the downtown sort of west side of the city, Parkdale, where the C&E is, where Ontario Place, that area of the city. And there's a rather large division that has some diverse needs. And I say that just to say it's a great place to work, because it's a smorgasbord. There's everything there. It's a very unique place. Every division is unique. They're all different. But early on in the pandemic, I would say early April, there were 4 officers from 14 Division that got infected by COVID, and trying to manage the workplace around this pandemic and all those issues that everybody were concerned about. And police officers have to show up to work; they have to be there, and to manage the workplace through that was a challenge, because information was coming in sporadically, and I don't think nationally or even globally we really had a full understanding at that early onset. So we had to adjust accordingly, and I'll tell you what really it didn't surprise me, but it's just one of those things that you go, hey, I took the right job. Folks came to work and they battled through it. They followed the protocols. They did what they were asked. They still showed up to do their job, because they realized that when the public calls, they have to be there. In the back of their mind, they have families, they have kids, they have extended families, we have health issues, all those things. So they had to manage their personal life to make sure that they were available to be at work. And so it was interesting. One of the good things for us was around those first 4 officers was the fact that when they came back to work, to see that you can, if you're relatively fit, all those kind of things, you'll be okay. So it in a strange way early on, it kind of deflated the anxiety at the station, because now they actually know somebody who got it. They've kind of worked through it, right? But organizationally, we had equipment to make sure members were protected. We had proper protocols in place, and all those other kind of things. So it's just one of those things where we had issues that consumed our day, in January, February, and all of a sudden now we have to shift, we have to pivot and deal with the pandemic upon everything else, just like everybody else. I mean, everybody's managing this. And it's just, what I think we do as humans. We just adapt to the given situation. So it was challenging, and it is still challenging. I mean, I everywhere you go, you gotta put a mask on, and it's not the easiest thing. I wear glasses most of the time, and they
fogging up.
All that kind of stuff, right? But we have the ability through the electronic format like this to be able to conduct meetings and still interact with people. But it's still not the same as face to face. I mean, you lose some of that. That body language that I think we need when we interact with folks. But we've done fairly well organizationally. We've done fairly well. We've got a full team of people that are looking out for the wellness of our folks, because at the end of the day, if somebody calls the police, we have to have folks available there to answer that call, right? So very proud of this organization and the profession. I think, you look right across the country, folks are doing this day in, day out because it's who they are.
No, yeah, it's I think everybody right now is really working hard to thrive and survive in this pandemic and this climate that we're in. Especially what I see organizations doing, you have to flip the entire script on a 180 and do what you need to do and work fast, because not only do you have lives in your hands, you have a ton of other employees that need to follow suit and work with that. So it must have been quite a challenging time. And so, going back to that 14th when you're leading that, you had COVID, you also had the George Floyd protests and everything that went on. How was that atmosphere, in those protests? Like how was your team dealing with it? How was that situation for you?
So again, there's another twist to this. We just started through COVID, and then we have those terrible things that happen south of the border that become that helps to inform the narrative here north of farther north, and obviously cities, our whole country was impacted by those incidences down south, and to be totally frank, we have issues up here as well that we were always dealing with. Despite what the experience was down south. So trying to manage those things, the right for the public to be able to voice their concerns, to protest, and those things in an environment where you have a pandemic, it was a struggle. But overwhelmingly, I can tell you, and I'm so proud of this, the city, no windows were smashed, there was no damage. People were concerned, they were angry, they were upset, they had every right to. But they did it properly, and I think, their voices were heard. There's things that are changing as a result. These 81 recommendations that our services board came up with are a direct result of the public's voice on these issues around policing in our communities. So, it helps us to get better. Like I said earlier, I mean, we don't say tomorrow, we hope that there's something else that's challenging that comes along because we're going to get better for it. We just, when it comes, we manage through it. And I think when you look through the other end of the tunnel, that hey, we did it, we came through it. Little scars for everybody, maybe, but generally, we're better off for it. So, it was a tough time. It still is a tough time because these are concerns in I think the majority of members' minds. They don't want to go to work and be hated by the public. They don't want to go to work and cause harm to anybody. They want to do do good for people, right? And so when there's concern around conduct and all these things that are valid depending on the perspective you sit in, members have to struggle through that, right? And they have to not take it personal. You have to sort of step back and say, okay, it's it could be this patch, or it could be the profession that people are upset with, and there are concerns. But the problem is, you can't paint everybody with the same brush, but you can't also ignore the color of the paint. To kind of, if that analogy sort of fits. So, I think we've been very good at engaging in those conversations. We had a number of protests early on that Stacey Clark and myself, Stacey was the inspector at 14 at the time, decided to participate in, because we wanted to be there, to support our members, to say, listen, we could sit in our office and watch it, but we wanted to be there to support our members, but more importantly, so that the community could see us. We're direct representatives of the command and the chief, and we want to be out there interacting with the public as well. And it was important for both of us to go, to see and feel what was out there. And what that's started for us was the ability to then, go back and go on parades and have discussions with the men and women that are out there every day and discuss some of the concerns they have, right? I mean, they're members of the community as well. So when they take that uniform off, they have the same conversations that you would have with your family or anybody else would, maybe with a little bit different lens. And sometimes, it's hard to kind of weed through that stuff. So they would obviously come and have questions of us. We are the unit commanders of the division and sort of set the direction, and we're representatives of our chief in command as well. So being involved in that was very uplifting because, again, like I said, I was so proud of the public, valid concerns. They were able to voice it in a way that I think most people heard, and caused some change, but again, did it, in the proper way.
Of course, I think I really love what you just said about not taking it personally. I think that's the thing that actually really spoke to me just now. Is it's humbling actually to hear that you're humble enough. Obviously, like you said, not everybody can be painted with the same brush. So, but I'm just talking about you. You're humble enough to say that is that you can't take things like that personally. You have to look back and reflect on what's the job, what are we doing for the community, and things like that. So I myself as a POC that's huge to hear that's coming from the organization. You brought up Stacey Clark. And I read some amazing things about her. Black woman, highest in her rank, police officer as well. Also a very, close colleague of yours. And I would like to talk about this tweet you wrote on June 7th, 2020. And you said, please don't let our Black brothers and sisters bear this burden alone. They have our back and now we have to have theirs. The struggle is real and we have to step up. Stacey is my partner and I will not stand idle. I would love to talk about, what did that tweet mean?
So again, this that stemmed from conversations having, to go back a little bit. My tenure in the organization, the number of different places I've worked with, friendships that I've gained both inside the organization and out. Certainly seeing that there's another side to this conversation. And what I tried to drive home with respect to that is we have racialized members that work with us, and I think, and I'll just speak for myself. I mean, when you see a member that you work with, you see the uniform, you know that they work here. The color or the gender doesn't necessarily, for me, come to mind. Like it's just okay, that's that person, and you deal with them however, right? But what I was trying to say is, listen, we got to take a step back. When we take these uniforms off, a white officer has a different experience than a black officer or a racialized officer, and you have to put yourselves in the shoes of those members that sit alongside you. They put their life on the line for you. You put your life on the line for them. Just stop and think for a minute. Is their lived experience outside their employment hours the same as yours? And we can argue that everybody's is different, but the reality is there are some folks that have a totally different and I would say terrible lived experience just based on gender, sexual preference, orientation, and being racialized. So what I wanted folks was to just kind of stop thinking about yourself, and we do that, I think, naturally. Just be a little bit more reflective to those folks that you sit with, that you work every day, that you treat normally and as equals. That there's another part to them that may occur when they're with families. I mean, a racialized officer may be asked, you're a black person. What do you think about what happened to George Floyd? Thinking that they have to take a position against the police or not, or whatever it is. And then it's not that a non-racialized or a white officer would have that same discussion, but I would respectfully say it's a different conversation. And Stacey shared with me the conversation she had with her family, her kids, sort of not being asked to pick, but having to deal with that duality of loving a profession, being very successful, a thoughtful person, but then also understanding from a personal level the feelings of the community, right? And I don't have that same experience. I mean, I'm engaged in these conversations all the time, but my lived experience is totally different from a black female officer, right? And then that's the reality of it. So when I talk to people, and again, being around for over 30 years in the organization, we got great people in this organization, and they're very thoughtful, all those other kind of things that are important, and we truly are. But I just wanted people to extend themselves a little bit more. When you're sitting with somebody that or you work with, ask what it's like. If they don't want to talk about it, fine. But maybe they want to share their experience, and in that conversation, we all become a little bit more enlightened and thoughtful. And then maybe you can say, listen, I never knew that that so and so had this experience. Maybe now you can reflect a little bit better on how members of the public might feel. Right?
Exactly. It's like what the chief said, back to what you were saying, is it's getting to know the story. And I think a lot of us never knew the story. I'll share my experience with you actually. At the start of the pandemic, it was very rough as a Asian person when, the pandemic just started, because there was a lot of, prejudice against Asians, with coronavirus and things like that. And I was, speaking to my black friends. I'm like, wow, this is horrible, and this is like 1/1000th of whatever you're feeling. And I felt it for like a second, and I was comparing myself. I was like, wow, this is not easy. And, and now it's not as much of a big thing, at least for me anymore, because everybody has, it's coronavirus is everywhere, right? It's the global pandemic, so it's not as much anymore. But it's still there. But I guess what my point is that getting to know the story and then feeling it at the same time, even at a fraction, is just overwhelming. And I think what you're saying in terms of getting to know the story and getting to know people, and that is so huge. And I think that's why we're here too, because what I want to know is your story as well with you. As much as you say, you don't have that duality, you really do. You're dealing with things with the public nonstop. This is your job. And I'm sure there's a lot of negativity that comes with the job that comes from the public or people who don't understand. And I would like to know how you deal with that personally on a mental health aspect, because you got to go home. I know you teach minor league hockey as well. And, you need to take that away and focus on your family, on the team when they're on the ice. How do you deal with that? What's your way of I guess, either leaving it at home or dealing with it?
So it's funny when you said that, and I'm trying to think of an answer, like, how do you answer a question like that? A long time ago, and I share this with people that I mentor, and it's something I keep on my desk, and I just pull it out to show you. There's a thing that, and I would encourage folks to have a look at it if you can Google it. It's called the 4 agreements. And in that, there's, they talk about being impeccable with your word. Number 2 is the one that really resonates with me, and I have to think about it often, is don't take things personally. And, when I talk to members who feel passionate about an issue, or, why is somebody saying this or whatever, they're not talking about necessarily the name on the chest. They don't know who you are. Again, it's maybe about the patch. It could be about the profession. So step back a bit, take a deep breath, and understand what the concern is. It's not that necessarily you personally have done something wrong. In some instances it is, and we've got avenues and ways to deal with that. But don't be so offended by the fact that somebody is taking a position on something. I look at that as an opportunity to have that communication, to maybe add some information that will inform the person, that to maybe change their mind or look at ways to deal with the issue that's there. So the big thing is about it's hard trying to explain this, that you want to take things personally because you care about it, but at the same respect, understand that a lot of times these criticisms are not about individual people. It's about systemic issues. It's about organizational issues that just don't make sense for people, and sometimes, frankly, don't even make sense for us anymore. And I think just that little shift in perspective. I've seen people, it's kind of a light switch is on. So, that kind of gives me an out. I don't have to be positioned and entrenched in something. You yourself can see, how things are can be done a little bit differently. And the other one is don't make assumptions and always do your best. It's a simple, maybe a corny little thing, but I keep it right here because, sometimes I have to remind myself it's not about me, and they're not, the questions aren't about my conduct and that. It's about, largely bigger issues. So, that's sort of how I've managed it. And I've had to learn the hard ways because you start out, you're stubborn, you think you know everything, and you get out of police college and you know the laws, but you don't know the gray areas, right? And yeah. you can't understand sometimes because you haven't had that lived experiences, how somebody could think or believe that. And you have to find out why, right? And a lot of times it makes sense from where they sit, and communication dialogue can shift everybody's perspective into a more common area. So, it's no panacea. It's not the solution to everything, but that's sort of how I deal with it. That, I don't take things personally. Listen, we all know if somebody is trying to attack you personally, you feel it inside. And that's when you have to now, you do things a little bit differently. But the vast majority of times, criticisms towards the police are not, pinpointed to an individual. And
sorry, I was going to say, do you know how I look at it? I first off, preach, Rob. You're saying amazing things right now. I look at it almost. I did entertainment for 20 years. From acting, singing, dancing. And if nobody's telling me or critiquing me, then something is wrong.
Right.
And that's how I look at it with any critique that happens in any profession. Because if nobody's saying anything, then there's an issue here. And I think the fact that obviously we see that people are putting opinions out because of obviously anger and issues that are happening, but also, what other people don't really understand, again, this goes back to not taking it personal, is they're looking at it from a growth perspective. Like you said, this is an opportunity to be better at what we all do, whether it's communication, whether it's how we are more proactive rather than reactive and things like that. So that's how I'm seeing you speak about it with those, the 4 agreements or the 4. Amazing. Well, you better send me that because I'm going to need that whenever I get in a...
It's all over the internet. It's all in color now. I've got this thing. I've had this for probably 15 years. I carry it around everywhere. Every place that I've worked, it's the first thing I put on my blotter because, and I share it with folks just to say, listen, give yourself an out. Like, divest yourself from taking it personally if you have an opportunity. And then once you start looking at it that perspective, it's funny how, for me anyway, I see things a little bit differently. Okay, let's try to resolve this together, right? I understand what you're saying. Hopefully you can understand what I'm saying. If not, let's find, the commonalities in this. And a lot of times, again, it's, just quickly as a comparison, police oversight, there are a number of agencies that oversee the police conduct, and they overlap to some extent, but by and large, the public doesn't understand each role and the limitations in each role. And I tell you, even inside organizationally, members sometimes have a hard time understanding. So it's a convoluted area. And when you don't get the result that you expect, you think it may be because of a bias or something else. And I'm not saying that there isn't. That's a discussion for another day. But part of that is also a communication piece around, what the limitations of these systems are. And is there a way, to look at that a little bit differently, as opposed to intent on making sure that officers are not held to account, right? The intent is to make sure that officers are held to account with the systems that have been designed for that, right? And around police accountability, police officers obviously get their backup at that because they don't come to work to try to do bad things. Sometimes bad things happen, but sometimes they believe that the public thinks they get away with everything, right? And so it's one of those things that that conversation around police conduct and misconduct is something where members have to not take it personal, step back and look at it from a community perspective, right?
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things actually I forgot to bring up, and I've heard that not many people are doing this, but you're in the Wellesley Institute or working with a program with them. I'd love for you to talk about what that is and why it's, a need or something that's different for the organization.
So I'm just trying to think, how to sort of say this to you in a way that kind of makes sense. And the reason I'm struggling a little bit is because I was kind of just told I was going to partake in this. I'm so grateful that I've been allowed to do this. And I've had one meeting with the mentor that they've assigned me, and it's been unbelievable. An hour and a half with him, and it was just a discussion sort of like this thing. And there are 3 or 4 more that are set up. Unfortunately, the last couple have been canceled because of conflicts in both schedules. So I just got a taste of it, and I'm excited about how that is going to help to develop me as a leader, as well as personally about seeing things from a different perspective. And I think that's what they're going to offer us, those that have been fortunate enough to be able to take the training. But personally, it's an exciting experience to be involved with a group of folks that are as thoughtful and have the credibility that they have. So it's amazing opportunity. I just want more of it, and I can't wait for it. Right. So it's early on. Like I said, other than the introduction, sure. I've had one session, and it was enlightening.
That's amazing. So for the people that don't have these resources, or are unfortunate enough, and it sounds like you have a very high emotional intelligence as well, stepping back from the situation. For the people that don't and don't have these resources, what would you recommend that they do in order to, I guess, open up?
That's a tough one because you don't know what resources are available. Some people have access to nothing because they're just not aware, and it's about finding those system navigators in society that will be able to help people along. Like you look at new immigrants who may have can't speak the language and maybe feel isolated. How does somebody like that access that? Their basic needs are to feed and look after their families. How do they develop the emotional intelligence and those kind of things? I think most people are thoughtful, and through communication with people who on every side of the spectrum. I mean, you've got uh, people all over the map on certain positions. I think if you encourage an opportunity to engage in dialogue, and not with extremists. I mean, that's a lost cause, because there's no dialogue. It's all sort of one sided. You can get that kind of um, training or development just by talking with other people, right?
Yeah.
We all have different stories, different experiences, and through talking about those things, we all get better. Right? We learn little things, and we say, how to problem solve, like how do people manage family issues and all those other kind of things. Mental health is a huge issue for us now, both internally and externally. Always has been, always will be. And that discussion is around what it is the police can and can't do, should or shouldn't do. But we have to talk to people who are engaged in dealing with that, which includes people with that lived experience. We can't forget about the end user, and we have, because
Absolutely.
I don't think it's intentional, but we have to engage everybody. And so I think if people who don't have those resources, formal training is great, and having experts kind of quickly guide you through things is obviously beneficial. But just by being alive, I think, and being open and receptive to different points of view, different conversations, I think evolves us all individually, along that continuum.
Absolutely. And I absolutely agree. And to finish this up, I want to bring back to young Rob and present Rob with the jean jacket from the 80s. I want to talk about your awesome style, but that comes with that is what fuels you? What excites you to do this job every day? Is it a personal thing? Is it a story? I don't know what it is, but what is that thing that lets you push through all the press, all the things that that weigh heavy on you to continue to help people?
So the first thing, the jean jacket is a story. Anybody who grew up in the '80s, everybody had a Levi jean jacket, and I made the mistake of wearing that to work one day. I think I was probably even off duty, attended headquarters here, and I ran into Megan Gray, who's works in our corporate communications, and she's never let me forget that. Kind of like the throwback to the '80s. Unfortunately, I never had the hair that matched the look of the '80s, but I certainly had the jean jacket, and I still have it. And the funny thing is, my daughter, who's 24 years old, took it and still wears it. And
that's what we do. That's what we do. I stole all my dad's stuff. Yep.
Yeah. And you're wearing one there. You're rocking it there. So that's for a jean jacket. But with respect to how do I keep going, or why do what I do, is because every day it's been. Listen, I've worked in a number of different areas, and we all have bad days, but overwhelmingly they've been great days, and it's because of not only people inside the organization, people in the public. The community that you're able to, that I've been able to interact with, and I have to believe, and I do believe that I've helped people, even if it's a small thing, that I've made a difference in somebody's life, and that's what keeps me going, and motivates me. And I see all the good work, things that people selfishly do inside this organization, this profession, but also from the community, how we can all come together to make us all better, to solve these issues that cause us all concern. That's why I get up every day. This job has been so amazing. Being able to experience so many different things that I could never have imagined. And unlike some people, and I'm not saying it's wrong, but I never grew up wanting to be a police officer. It was something I did at last minute. Again, that's a story for another day. Not really last minute, but I didn't have any preconceived notions about what this would be. I knew it wouldn't be like TV, and I wasn't looking for that. But and I think because I came into it kind of eyes wide open with no expectations, that I've enjoyed every experience, good and bad, as I've moved along in the organization. And just to kind of now, after sort of 3 decades into this profession, look around to see people are still coming to join this profession. They show up with a vim and vigor to go out there and make a difference, in the lives of community as well as themselves and other members of the organization is what fuels me. It's just that sense of belonging, teamwork. I mean, you mentioned coaching hockey. I like things that are teamwork. I mean, you're only as good as the folks that are around you. And when you have a team, no matter where it is and how it's how it's made up, it's amazing the things you can accomplish. So
Absolutely.
I fell into this. I love it, and I would encourage anybody who's considering a challenging, rewarding career. It's not going to be easy, but good things never are. So It's been great.
I'm glad to have you on my team right now to have this dialogue and this conversation. But Rob, is there anything you want to say to, I guess, everybody out there listening, whether it's the public, whether it's your fellow teammates? What do you want to say?
Just first of all, thank you guys for this opportunity to be able to just to speak one-on-one like this. And my goal is to be able to have folks, members of the community, feel comfortable with the police. And I know that's a hard thing because we sometimes haven't deserved it, haven't earned it, we've made mistakes. And it's something that we got to just keep trying to do better. So I would encourage people to get to know their police officers, no matter where you live. Across the country or anywhere in the world for that matter, and be involved with your policing organizations. There's a number of committees that folks can volunteer on. There's a whole bunch of different ways that you can inform the discussion around that, and it's important to make us better. So again, just be part of the team. Just ask questions, continue to be there, and together we get better.
Thank you so much, Rob. 24 Shades of Blue. We're out.